There's a few things you might have noticed since we started Mass. One, Deacon John and I are wearing rose vestments, or pink, whatever, some people get uptight about that, but. This week we celebrate Laetare Sunday. It's this fourth Sunday in Lent. It's kind of our halftime, if you will. And the Lord reminds us of the joy that we have in Him as we continue to work through this time of penance in preparation for Easter. The second thing you might have noticed is that the church seems a little bit fuller today than it normally does on the 11 o'clock Mass. And that's for two reasons. One being the third thing you might have noticed. The first reason why we're a little bit more full today is because 13 of the men of our parish, including Deacon John and myself, just returned about 45 minutes ago from an Acts retreat, our first parish Acts retreat for men. The women's retreat is coming up this next weekend. And those men are the ones around you who are kind of filled with extra joy on this Laetare Sunday after this extremely transformative experience of this retreat that we just returned from. We also welcome with us the team that led that Acts retreat for us, men and their families from Christ the King Parish who have joined us for Mass today. And the last thing you might have noticed, which is the other reason why the church is a little bit extra full today, is that if you spent time this week looking and reading the readings for today, then you were perhaps a bit confused that the readings were different than the ones you prepared with. This week we also celebrate at this Mass what's called the second scrutiny. The scrutinies are a series of final liturgical rites in the order of Christian initiation for adults, for those who are kind of in the immediate preparation to receive the sacraments of baptism, confirmation, and the Eucharist in just a couple of weeks at the Easter Vigil. And so these men and women attend different Masses here at St. Francis, but this week they're all here with us, and we're here praying for them. And whenever we use these scrutinies at the Mass, no matter what year in the liturgical cycle it is, we always use the readings for year A when we do the scrutinies. And so we were presented by the Lord and by the Church with these readings. This reading from Samuel, Psalm 23, which is so familiar to all of us, this reading from Ephesians, and this gospel recounting the story of this man born blind who was healed by the Lord, who was made to see. And this fascinating and challenging interaction that the Lord has, or rather that this man born blind has with the Pharisees in regards to the Lord and his role in transforming this man's life. Praying with this gospel and these readings and going through this retreat experience that we just had on Acts, I think I have come to understand the Pharisees a little bit better. I've come to understand in some sense where they're coming from, what their struggle is with Jesus, what their struggle is with the way that Jesus works in people's lives. And I think their struggle is that the Pharisees, like many of us, have everything figured out. They know how things work. They know how they work. They know how other people work. They know how the Lord works. And then Jesus comes along and he says, that's actually not how any of that works. And they're frustrated and they're threatened. And they run into this kind of existential crisis of, if that's not how anything works, then my whole life perhaps seems to have been a lie. And my whole life can't have been a lie, so clearly he's the one that is wrong. Clearly he's a sinner. Clearly he cannot be from God. He cannot be a prophet. I think what we're called to is more to have the disposition of this man who was born blind, who, when pressed by the Pharisees, doesn't seek to explain everything, and in fact refuses to really give much of an answer at all. He goes, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know who this man is. I don't know where he's from. All I know is that I was born blind and now I can see after this encounter with him. There's many things in our life that we have figured out. We know how things work. We know who we are. We know what we are. We know how we act. And we know how the Lord acts in response to that. And that blindness convinces us of many things. Things like, yeah, I may struggle with insert favorite sin here, but at least I didn't murder anybody. As if murder is the only sin that can truly enslave us and crush our souls. Or perhaps things like this person, insert name of person who offended you at some point in your life, can never change. This person clearly is rotten to the core, and there's no reason for me to think anything else about this person. Or I am rotten to the core. I can never change. I can never overcome my sin. Or, perhaps even more pervasive, the Lord can never love me in the state in which I am in right now. And I'm the one who has to change myself in order for the Lord to love me. Or many of the other lies that we are so convinced of and have become part of everything that we think and everything that we believe. The thing that we have to recognize as we prayed in the Psalms is that we are sheep. And to be somewhat frank, sheep are kind of dumb. I'm reminded of this kind of viral meme video of a sheep who's stuck in a drainage ditch, and the sheep is pulled out. The shepherds kind of finally free him from this drainage ditch, and he starts to run off, and he takes 2 steps, and then on the 3rd jump goes right back into the ditch. That's what we are, right? And because we are sheep, we can't really know the blindness of our own hearts. We cannot figure out the ways in which our hearts need to be transformed. We cannot figure out the ways in which we are blind. We cannot figure out the ways in which we stubbornly hold to lies. The only way for us to know the blindness of our own heart is by exposing the darkness of our hearts to the light of the Lord. God is the one who heals our blindness. God is the one who opens our eyes to the lies that we believe and the lies in which we entrench ourselves. And God is the one who frees us from those lies. God is the one who brings us deeper conversion. God is the one in his love who transforms us and makes us like himself. If there's one thing that we're meant to do in Lent, it's to expose the darkness of our heart to the light of the Lord. In prayer, in fasting, in almsgiving, in the sacraments, in the Eucharist, in confession. To let his light go where we don't want it to go. Go to the places that we want to hold just for ourselves. To let his light penetrate us and show us, even perhaps sometimes in painful ways, where he wants to send his love, where he wants to transform us, where he wants to make us more like himself. And so, encouraged by him in this sacrament in which he gives himself to us, body, blood, soul, and divinity, let's move into the second half of Lent with open hearts. Let's take time in prayer, in confession, in adoration, in our participation in Mass, to expose our hearts to the light of God's love, so that he can open the eyes of our blindness and show us the way to him.